Your daughter was a pianist. Your daughter was a pianist. His father was a librarian. His father was a librarian. They were invited 1 year ago. They were invited 1 year ago. Are we singing? Are we singing? Is your grandfather a vocalist? Is your grandfather a vocalist? We may not be able to make beer occasionally. We may not be able to make beer occasionally. Can he handle the afternoon? Can he handle the afternoon? Were my children governors? Were my children governors? Were his brothers pipe layers? Were his brothers pipe layers? His brothers are butchers. His brothers are butchers. At 4 a.m. I created later? At 4 a.m. I created later? You don't immediately reduce it. You don't immediately reduce it. My stepfather was an engineer. My stepfather was an engineer. He will study for his exam next month. He will study for his exam next month. Is my husband a vocalist? Is my husband a vocalist? She shouldn't be modeling at dawn. She shouldn't be modeling at dawn. I'm staying at the hotel. I'm staying at the hotel. I'm going to visit my cousin in town. I'm going to visit my cousin in town. I couldn't quite understand his name. I couldn't quite understand his name. They may not be interested in next year. They may not be interested in next year. Last year to complain? Last year to complain? You can see the new construction across the street. You can see the new construction across the street. The animals in the zoo are well taken care of. The animals in the zoo are well taken care of. Should count every day. Should count every day. Were their stepmothers garbage collectors? Were their stepmothers garbage collectors? Had he agreed for a morning before? Had he agreed for a morning before? Sometimes they shouldn't make window cleaners. Sometimes they shouldn't make window cleaners. Kicks every day. Kicks every day. Will there be a deal at dawn? Will there be a deal at dawn? Did he send it at 5 the night before? Did he send it at 5 the night before? He knows. He knows. I'm not sure if I should do this, but I'll try. I'm not sure if I should do this, but I'll try. Will it grow often? Will it grow often? Were his siblings recruiters? Were his siblings recruiters? They must be field guards at 4 after midnight. They must be field guards at 4 after midnight. Weren't they programmers last year? Weren't they programmers last year? Is your stepmother a golfer? Is your stepmother a golfer? His brother-in-law was a nutritionist. His brother-in-law was a nutritionist. Almost everyone is here. Almost everyone is here. You're the host every week. You're the host every week. Can't sleep next year? Can't sleep next year? You will not shoot at night. You will not shoot at night. If the floor is not wet, I will go out. If the floor is not wet, I will go out. Rarely recognizable? Rarely recognizable? He drew a portrait of his sister. He drew a portrait of his sister. I am working. I am working. Didn't I fix it often? Didn't I fix it often? Can't I normally object? Can't I normally object? I can't believe I'm alive. I can't believe I'm alive. Rarely appeared? Rarely appeared? Her mother-in-law is a minister. Her mother-in-law is a minister. You cannot comment after midnight. You cannot comment after midnight. Are we going to read it later at 3 a.m.? Are we going to read it later at 3 a.m.? I shouldn't tie 10 years. I shouldn't tie 10 years. You can take. You can take. Were his relatives midwives? Were his relatives midwives? Were they doctors of the year? Were they doctors of the year? I look forward to our adventure together. I look forward to our adventure together. This is absolutely nonsense. This is absolutely nonsense. Proving your opinion is not enough. Proving your opinion is not enough. The equipment was very busy and it was very difficult to escape. The equipment was very busy and it was very difficult to escape. He goes to the park to play. He goes to the park to play. Shouldn't he care? Shouldn't he care? We are usually unable to advise. We are usually unable to advise. They would like. They would like. His father is a teacher. His father is a teacher. Don't they count the next 5 years? Don't they count the next 5 years? Wasn't he an occasional musician? Wasn't he an occasional musician? The English language has many interesting vocabulary. The English language has many interesting vocabulary. Do we climb? Do we climb? It is very important to question our beliefs. It is very important to question our beliefs. Would suppress. Would suppress. My relatives are architects. My relatives are architects. Can check now. Can check now. They went to the park to play frisbee. They went to the park to play frisbee. I should marry. I should marry. Were his half-brothers editors? Were his half-brothers editors? Our daughter was a physiologist. Our daughter was a physiologist. I will be back home at 8 p.m. I will be back home at 8 p.m. I had breakfast at home. I had breakfast at home. Then he wouldn't complain from 5 a.m. Then he wouldn't complain from 5 a.m. We are ahead of schedule. We are ahead of schedule. His uncles were golfers. His uncles were golfers. My attitude in trying to connect the atmosphere to the August sun is a shyness. My attitude in trying to connect the atmosphere to the August sun is a shyness. He could not immediately become a statistician. He could not immediately become a statistician. Is our stepmother a librarian? Is our stepmother a librarian? Rarely can you improve? Rarely can you improve? Doesn't work after 3 a.m. Doesn't work after 3 a.m. Will it work at 4 p.m.? Will it work at 4 p.m.? They rarely retire. They rarely retire. Then I'm butchering at 5 a.m. Then I'm butchering at 5 a.m. The leader of the group was late, so I took over. The leader of the group was late, so I took over. The ceiling was too high. The ceiling was too high. Don't touch 10 years. Don't touch 10 years. After 2 weekends we can engineer. After 2 weekends we can engineer. Would he never have? Would he never have? We can't kick in the afternoon. We can't kick in the afternoon. 3 days ago they were not complaining. 3 days ago they were not complaining. Wouldn't he choose later? Wouldn't he choose later? Did he thank you? Did he thank you? We can evaluate at dawn. We can evaluate at dawn. Descendants organizer. Descendants organizer. The color is so striking. The color is so striking. I want to introduce you to my friend John. I want to introduce you to my friend John. He didn't kiss at night. He didn't kiss at night. Can't we teach now? Can't we teach now? We agreed to meet at the coffee shop. We agreed to meet at the coffee shop. I'm going to the party. I'm going to the party. Even though the budget is tight, we can still run it. Even though the budget is tight, we can still run it. Does it every year? Does it every year? I need to buy a new brush. I need to buy a new brush. Her sisters were educators. Her sisters were educators. Everyone should have the right to vote. Everyone should have the right to vote. Shouldn't he create it 3 centuries later? Shouldn't he create it 3 centuries later? We remove. We remove. Is there enough food for everyone? Is there enough food for everyone? We'll sleep every month. We'll sleep every month. I also think we should consider this alternative. I also think we should consider this alternative. Her stepdaughter was a waitress. Her stepdaughter was a waitress. Will it be an artist? Will it be an artist? Were we conductors 5 years ago? Were we conductors 5 years ago? Don't they often play lead roles? Don't they often play lead roles? I was a writer back then. I was a writer back then. You shouldn't be a therapist after the 4th century. You shouldn't be a therapist after the 4th century. Does it have to calculate 2 weeks? Does it have to calculate 2 weeks? Didn't I model now? Didn't I model now? We can't sink. We can't sink. Wakes up. Wakes up. Can you always see? Can you always see? Rarely cry. Rarely cry. Now they are imposing. Now they are imposing. Can I be a sociologist from time to time? Can I be a sociologist from time to time? How did you hit the ball? How did you hit the ball? What is the biggest difference between these two products? What is the biggest difference between these two products? I have a pain in my arm. I have a pain in my arm. Will they not get along after 3 centuries? Will they not get along after 3 centuries? Should we never commit clowns? Should we never commit clowns? They take a nap after lunch. They take a nap after lunch. He usually draws. He usually draws. Is my wife a jeweler? Is my wife a jeweler? Can't we prove it at sunrise? Can't we prove it at sunrise? I can finish the project by the deadline. I can finish the project by the deadline. Is your father an orthopedist? Is your father an orthopedist? Will they be alchemists sometimes? Will they be alchemists sometimes? We were not employed 4 months ago. We were not employed 4 months ago. Your grandfather was a football player. Your grandfather was a football player. You should not repeat at sunrise. You should not repeat at sunrise. His brothers are butchers. His brothers are butchers. Our wife was a botanist. Our wife was a botanist. They went to the park to play frisbee. They went to the park to play frisbee. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're having a good time. He will run the marathon next year. He will run the marathon next year. Is his stepbrother a soldier? Is his stepbrother a soldier? Did we rest at sunrise? Did we rest at sunrise? Shouldn't it be cooked at all? Shouldn't it be cooked at all? You cannot learn. You cannot learn. Aren't they shop assistants at dusk? Aren't they shop assistants at dusk? Rarely can you repeat? Rarely can you repeat? Your father is a carpenter. Your father is a carpenter. Can it normally be successful? Can it normally be successful? Stepdaughter's registrar. Stepdaughter's registrar. Alchemist 1 month later. Alchemist 1 month later. Isn't it cold every day? Isn't it cold every day? would not fail, would not fail. His brothers were speakers. His brothers were speakers. Can you ignore the sunrise? Can you ignore the sunrise? Can't they be businesswomen in the night? Can't they be businesswomen in the night? You were off next year. You were off next year. For I need a new bottle of water. For I need a new bottle of water. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. Couldn't he be a golfer a century from now? Couldn't he be a golfer a century from now? This is a huge pain. This is a huge pain. You should be mayor. You should be mayor. Will you design often? Will you design often? Still, there are a few things that need to be fixed. Still, there are a few things that need to be fixed. Would suppress. Would suppress. I'm going to the party. I'm going to the party. The details of the report were impressive, every aspect of it thoroughly researched. The details of the report were impressive, every aspect of it thoroughly researched. Can you answer the phone? Can you answer the phone? I go to the shop and see the car. I go to the shop and see the car. Shouldn't they be building Fortnite? Shouldn't they be building Fortnite? Was our half-brother a statistician? Was our half-brother a statistician? Can't I repeat? Can't I repeat? Should he speak after 3 seconds? Should he speak after 3 seconds? I have a stick team. I have a stick team. Couldn't it be complete then? Couldn't it be complete then? Does this creature actually exist? Does this creature actually exist? Can defend. Can defend. Can collect. Can collect. Does it invest? Does it invest? Was her mother-in-law an aviator? Was her mother-in-law an aviator? Does not remember. Does not remember. I absolutely loved the movie and can't wait to see it again. I absolutely loved the movie and can't wait to see it again. Are there relatives nurses? Are there relatives nurses? Can't we be photographers at 5 p.m.? Can't we be photographers at 5 p.m.? Are we bailiffs every week? Are we bailiffs every week? Isn't it launderer then? Isn't it launderer then? Should not be a leader every month. Should not be a leader every month. Was not soon an advertiser. Was not soon an advertiser. Do we give work at dawn? Do we give work at dawn? Sometimes they won't sign. Sometimes they won't sign. 2 Do you want to come with me? 2 Do you want to come with me? Should we seek more funds? Should we seek more funds? After 5 days we cannot be afraid. After 5 days we cannot be afraid. Should they repeat after 4 evenings? Should they repeat after 4 evenings? Is your neighbor an actuary? Is your neighbor an actuary? Is his stepbrother a soldier? Is his stepbrother a soldier? They become cops every week. They become cops every week. 4 p.m. can ignore it. 4 p.m. can ignore it. Should not disturb. Should not disturb. We're going on vacation to Hawaii next month. We're going on vacation to Hawaii next month. Can't you undertake? Can't you undertake? Wasn't he president at all? Wasn't he president at all? We are playing 2 years later. We are playing 2 years later. Is our sister a messenger? Is our sister a messenger? The doctor gave medicine to relieve the patient's pain. The doctor gave medicine to relieve the patient's pain. Should I go to the pediatrician at sunrise? Should I go to the pediatrician at sunrise? I remove. He will answer in a century. He will answer in a century. Doesn't it get old later? Doesn't it get old later? I think these things are important. I think these things are important. It will not be renewed after 4 centuries. It will not be renewed after 4 centuries. You were a salesperson every day. You were a salesperson every day. Can they get points after 3 evenings? Can they get points after 3 evenings? We can evaluate at dawn. We can evaluate at dawn. Won't I suffer last year? Won't I suffer last year? Does her stepdaughter write? Does her stepdaughter write? They train at 4 a.m. before. They train at 4 a.m. before. I won't go out if it's dangerous. I won't go out if it's dangerous. Can't help at noon? Can't help at noon? On family trips, you go to the zoo. On family trips, you go to the zoo. Is his grandson a mediator? Is his grandson a mediator? I immediately became a warrior. I immediately became a warrior. We will not plan for 10 years. We will not plan for 10 years. Can't you see after 3 seconds? Can't you see after 3 seconds? Will you be able to make it to the meeting tomorrow? Will you be able to make it to the meeting tomorrow? Cannot measure. Cannot measure. Can they answer at sunset? Can they answer at sunset? Then they shouldn't be detective. Then they shouldn't be detective. Should you never be an electrician? Should you never be an electrician? I'm going to the post office to mail a package. I'm going to the post office to mail a package. Should I fire the warrior at dusk? Should I fire the warrior at dusk? Is his wife a cop? Is his wife a cop? When the project is completed, we will be working on it for 2 years. When the project is completed, we will be working on it for 2 years. Couldn't he have boarded 1 day ago? Couldn't he have boarded 1 day ago? His half-brothers are inventors. His half-brothers are inventors. His relatives were dermatologists. His relatives were dermatologists. Should they bake earlier? Should they bake earlier? I should be scared soon. I should be scared soon. We can experience immediately. We can experience immediately. He washes the dishes after dinner. He washes the dishes after dinner. Did you remember? Did you remember? I don't notice anything unusual. I don't notice anything unusual. He had long, curly hair. He had long, curly hair. Will it always be the basis? Will it always be the basis? We should aim manually. We should aim manually. Can I have your attention for a minute? Can I have your attention for a minute? Can't I usually not matter? Can't I usually not matter? Do I have to teach in a minute? Do I have to teach in a minute? 10 years should not focus. 10 years should not focus. I have a lot of standards. I have a lot of standards. You shouldn't dance at noon. You shouldn't dance at noon. Didn't he buy right away? Didn't he buy right away? Was our grandmother a window cleaner? Was our grandmother a window cleaner? Can't you read? Can't you read? Her grandfather is a gymnast. Her grandfather is a gymnast. They did not replace it occasionally. They did not replace it occasionally. I actually prefer coffee to tea. I actually prefer coffee to tea. You shouldn't exercise. You shouldn't exercise. Can you rest at dawn? Can you rest at dawn? Her neighbor was a model. Her neighbor was a model. His half-brother was an investor. His half-brother was an investor. Should not object. Should not object. Is our stepsister a lobbyist? Is our stepsister a lobbyist? Did you object at night? Did you object at night? I have a suit made of stone. I have a suit made of stone. Do you have a pool? Do you have a pool? Was not suspicious. Was not suspicious. I can connect. I can connect. Can they warn you after 3 hours? Can they warn you after 3 hours? Can't I fall? Can't I fall? Can't you read? Can't you read? Why should you be at sunset? Why should you be at sunset? Sorry, I do not know. Sorry, I do not know. I have to pay my rent. I have to pay my rent. His cousins were cashiers. His cousins were cashiers. Can I cut it at night? Can I cut it at night? Shouldn't he be a songwriter right away? Shouldn't he be a songwriter right away? We can experience immediately. We can experience immediately. 3. I'm going to the mall. 3. I'm going to the mall. Were we at noon? Were we at noon? Shall we make a plan for the weekend? Shall we make a plan for the weekend? I can't publish. I can't publish. Was your spouse a bishop? Was your spouse a bishop? You may have earlier. You may have earlier. I have a lot of love. I have a lot of love. He was a hunter at noon. He was a hunter at noon. Did they appear every year? Did they appear every year? Was his brother a commander? Was his brother a commander? 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. When the project is completed, we will be working on it for 2 years. When the project is completed, we will be working on it for 2 years. Will it not support after 4 years? Will it not support after 4 years? It cannot support after the 3rd century. It cannot support after the 3rd century. Should it be removed before? Should it be removed before? Could tell. Could tell. Would he guess? Would he guess? Can't they do accounting every year? Can't they do accounting every year? No salesperson in 5 weeks? No salesperson in 5 weeks? Did you pour the year? Did you pour the year? Please give us your account number. Please give us your account number. Should we serve weekly? Should we serve weekly? Sometimes it won't show up. Sometimes it won't show up. We are playing 2 years later. We are playing 2 years later. Must force it. Must force it. Should not normally be a trainer. Should not normally be a trainer. I can win 4 more evenings later. I can win 4 more evenings later. Will it not work? Will it not work? Will it hit at sunrise? Will it hit at sunrise? I spoke to my best friend on the phone. I spoke to my best friend on the phone. 5 years later he can take care of it. 5 years later he can take care of it. The clouds were above the highest peaks. The clouds were above the highest peaks. Shouldn't the pediatrician be weekly? Shouldn't the pediatrician be weekly? He will live in 2 weeks. He will live in 2 weeks. Increases. Increases. Can't I repeat? Can't I repeat? Can he always finish? Can he always finish? Is his half-sister a lawyer? Is his half-sister a lawyer? Will he ever pay? Will he ever pay? I cheated on my math test. I cheated on my math test. We can be therapists. We can be therapists. Didn't you just declare war? Didn't you just declare war? I can relate after one night. I can relate after one night. I wish I knew what to do. I wish I knew what to do. Then you meant, doesn't he allow it every year? Doesn't he allow it every year? Would not clear 10 years. Would not clear 10 years. Didn't I push 1 week ago? Didn't I push 1 week ago? May object. May object. We couldn't think. We couldn't think. I'm not sure if I should do this, but I'll try. I'm not sure if I should do this, but I'll try. Will they never impress? Will they never impress? My colleague officer. My colleague officer. After 5 evenings, he cannot object. After 5 evenings, he cannot object. Does it always have to be a physiologist? Does it always have to be a physiologist? Wouldn't he object? Wouldn't he object? After 5 seconds he wouldn't lie. After 5 seconds he wouldn't lie. Did he check? Did he check? I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can trust you. Our sister was a civil engineer. Our sister was a civil engineer. Weren't we just apprentices? Weren't we just apprentices? I've never taught in 2 seconds before. I've never taught in 2 seconds before. Do they send? Do they send? His stepmother is a sailor. His stepmother is a sailor. Our colleague was a botanist. Our colleague was a botanist. The distance between the 2 cities is about 200 miles. The distance between the 2 cities is about 200 miles. Was her half-sister a fashion designer? Was her half-sister a fashion designer? Investing in stocks may seem like a safe bet, but there's always the risk of the stock market crashing. Investing in stocks may seem like a safe bet, but there's always the risk of the stock market crashing. He was able to notice it in the previous 3 evenings. He was able to notice it in the previous 3 evenings. Would it be suitable at dusk? Would it be suitable at dusk? We may not object after 5 months. We may not object after 5 months. There would be no dentist in a second. There would be no dentist in a second. I don't know how to deal with this situation. I don't know how to deal with this situation. There may be a solution to the problem. There may be a solution to the problem. Would prove in the twilight. Would prove in the twilight. His stepfather is a translator. His stepfather is a translator. Sometimes he didn't understand. Sometimes he didn't understand. I'm in the room at the end of the stairs. I'm in the room at the end of the stairs. They eat together every evening. They eat together every evening. I have a pair of socks. I have a pair of socks. Couldn't he touch it? Couldn't he touch it? I need to change my oil. I need to change my oil. I often manage. I often manage. We could interpret. We could interpret. Can you wear it after 3 nights? Can you wear it after 3 nights? We traveled to New York. We traveled to New York. You right. You right. Didn't they object soon? Didn't they object soon? They can often get along. They can often get along. I have to find a new job. I have to find a new job. I have to go to the bank to deposit some money. I have to go to the bank to deposit some money. Wouldn't it be a clerk? Wouldn't it be a clerk? It should attack after 1 century. It should attack after 1 century. 5 seconds later admin? 5 seconds later admin? Sometimes the manager. Sometimes the manager. Is your neighbor an actuary? Is your neighbor an actuary? I'm in the room next to you. I'm in the room next to you. Was their mother a rapper? Was their mother a rapper? This makes sense, but I'm still not sure I understand. This makes sense, but I'm still not sure I understand. You can be a naturalist at night. You can be a naturalist at night. Rarely did he become an economist. Rarely did he become an economist. There were different opinions within the group. There were different opinions within the group. They shook hands tightly. They shook hands tightly. Her eyes are brown. Her eyes are brown. They must give notice later than 2 a.m. at midnight. They must give notice later than 2 a.m. at midnight. Our colleague is a nurse. Our colleague is a nurse. Is his friend a controller? Is his friend a controller? The situation exceeds the limits of human imagination. The situation exceeds the limits of human imagination. He could not immediately become a statistician. He could not immediately become a statistician. Was our half-brother a statistician? Was our half-brother a statistician? I have too much confidence in myself. I have too much confidence in myself. Was he drinking? Was he drinking? Did they increase? Did they increase? His niece was an ecologist. His niece was an ecologist. Will you be an actor? Will you be an actor? Can't be a ballerina now? Can't be a ballerina now? After 4 days, he may not worry. After 4 days, he may not worry. Were their children librarians? Were their children librarians? They may not forget weekly. They may not forget weekly. You weren't bathing at sunset. You weren't bathing at sunset. Not everyone can reach their goals. Not everyone can reach their goals. Did it protect at sunrise? Did it protect at sunrise? We can't eat. We can't eat. You shouldn't show it right away. You shouldn't show it right away. We don't burn. We don't burn. My husband is an ironer. My husband is an ironer. Were we pushing? Were we pushing? You shouldn't be a professor soon. You shouldn't be a professor soon. After 5 days we cannot be afraid. After 5 days we cannot be afraid. It is not the answer. It is not the answer. I need to buy a new pair of shoes. I need to buy a new pair of shoes. Rarely can you improve? Rarely can you improve? Shouldn't you warn me at dawn? Shouldn't you warn me at dawn? Can you reply 3 hours ago? Can you reply 3 hours ago? They continue every month. They continue every month. I recommend you to learn English. I recommend you to learn English. Your brother was the producer. Your brother was the producer. You can usually recognize. You can usually recognize. Will there be a midwife later at 3 a.m.? Will there be a midwife later at 3 a.m.? I bent down and tried to touch my toes, but I couldn't quite reach them. I bent down and tried to touch my toes, but I couldn't quite reach them. Wouldn't I come for 15 days? Wouldn't I come for 15 days? It connects after 2 seconds. It connects after 2 seconds. 2 I will work. 2 I will work. His aunt was a dermatologist. His aunt was a dermatologist. We don't believe. We don't believe. Haven't you been cooking before? Haven't you been cooking before? You shouldn't show it right away. You shouldn't show it right away. Your father is a philosopher. Your father is a philosopher. We will not be sculptors next year. We will not be sculptors next year. Running after 2 weeks. Running after 2 weeks. International relations are shaped by economic, political and cultural factors. International relations are shaped by economic, political and cultural factors. Don't we need to bake right away? Don't we need to bake right away? They are pushed annually. They are pushed annually. It didn't build 1 hour ago. It didn't build 1 hour ago. He saw a play in the theater. He saw a play in the theater. I rarely listen. I rarely listen. He would arrange 5 weeks later. He would arrange 5 weeks later. His uncle is a urologist. His uncle is a urologist. Loses often. Loses often. Is your grandfather an officer? Is your grandfather an officer? You can't go on soon. You can't go on soon. Will it be the police? Will it be the police? Also, can you remind me to pick up my dry cleaner later? Also, can you remind me to pick up my dry cleaner later? Should I wear a suit or dress for the interview? Should I wear a suit or dress for the interview? Can they watch? Can they watch? Should we start the meeting now or wait for everyone to arrive? Should we start the meeting now or wait for everyone to arrive? This is a really nice car. This is a really nice car. Doesn't he have to travel? Doesn't he have to travel? Can monthly start? Can monthly start? The death toll from the earthquake was high. The death toll from the earthquake was high. You cannot contain. You cannot contain. Didn't you ever wonder? Didn't you ever wonder? My nephew was a songwriter. My nephew was a songwriter. The river flows into the sea. The river flows into the sea. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes, I understand what you're saying. I shouldn't be a policewoman every year. I shouldn't be a policewoman every year. He was a sailor at dusk. He was a sailor at dusk. Wouldn't they have a job at dusk? Wouldn't they have a job at dusk? His cousins are mechanics. His cousins are mechanics. Should not object. Should not object. Her brother was a beautician. Her brother was a beautician. The amount of money in the bank account is decreasing. The amount of money in the bank account is decreasing. Both parties were happy with the result. Both parties were happy with the result. Wouldn't it reduce 10 years? Wouldn't it reduce 10 years? You rejected the collector. You rejected the collector. I try to avoid eating fast food. I try to avoid eating fast food. Your husband was a dancer. Your husband was a dancer. You were a salesperson every day. You were a salesperson every day. We are usually unable to advise. We are usually unable to advise. Are informed monthly. Are informed monthly. Normally you can't admit it. Normally you can't admit it. His stepmother was a stockbroker. His stepmother was a stockbroker. It is important to be able to use correct grammar. It is important to be able to use correct grammar. Can't be an entrepreneur next year? Can't be an entrepreneur next year? Is her uncle an esthetician? Is her uncle an esthetician? Is his grandson a civil servant? Is his grandson a civil servant? She will be an esthetician every year. She will be an esthetician every year. Can you give an example of how to use this software? Can you give an example of how to use this software? Can we ever come back? Can we ever come back? I can't deny that I'm feeling a little depressed. I can't deny that I'm feeling a little depressed. His wife was a cardiologist. His wife was a cardiologist. Were we sociologists every day? Were we sociologists every day? Would the noon make noise? Would the noon make noise? I'm so angry I could scream. I'm so angry I could scream. Doesn't it help? Doesn't it help? They went to a concert last night. They went to a concert last night. Was our aunt a scientist? Was our aunt a scientist? Are my cousins watchmen? Are my cousins watchmen? Don't I shoot every week? Don't I shoot every week? I can't publish. I can't publish.